Alrighty, hello everybody. So, Mr. Gutierrez has been working in education in San Diego for nearly 20 years and has recently started working for the UC San Diego School of Medicine as a recruitment admission specialist. Most of his experience has been working at San Diego State University with their Educational Opportunity Program. During his time with this program at San Diego State, he worked with prospective and current low-income first-generation college students from all over the state of California. He is familiar with connecting prospective students to their higher educational goals. Please welcome Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm assuming the Mr. part is for me. Um, I'm going to share my presentation, folks. So it's going to be a PowerPoint. Going to just go over a lot of really, really boring information. However, it is going to be very helpful, especially for those of you that are in the middle or about to start thinking about applying to medical school. First and foremost, I'm going to thank you, Matthew, for that introduction. My name is Rodrigo Gutierrez. I work for the UC San Diego School of Medicine. Been here for a little over 14 months. If you want to if you want to actually see in real time my professional development in this position, go to this YouTube channel, and look up last year's presentation to give you an idea of how I've grown from one year to another. But it's an honor to be here to speak to you about our school. I want to begin by first saying two very important things. One, everything I'm telling you today is on behalf of UCSD School of Medicine, which is very important because whilst a lot of schools of medicine have very similar application processes, a lot of similar requirements, there are a lot of nuanced differences between schools. So it's very important and very good that you're all here. But it's very important that you ask questions and doing your due diligence when it comes to the application requirements. Not all medical schools are the same. Not all files and applicants are going to be reviewed the same. So it's very important you do that. You know that going forward. So I'm only speaking on behalf of UCSD. Number two, very important. I am just the messenger. Very, very, very important. What that means is when it comes to the admission process for the medical school, I do not read it. Applications. I do not sort them. I do not rank them. I do not evaluate them. I am here to deliver the message. So I am here to tell you about our medical school, what it takes, what we look for in applicants, and highlights about our medical school. But I am only here to help and answer your questions to make sure you know what it takes to apply to our medical school. Okay?
And Mr. Gutierrez's boss, Dr. Gulima, I think he's spoken 2 or 3 times. So if you want to go back and watch some of those, I think they're about a year old, or a little bit over a year old. So
Dr. Gulima, great guy. Definitely a very interesting story when it comes to his experience in medical school. So I'm going to begin the presentation. So allow me to get my slide deck all ready to go. Let's see. Okay. Oh, I'm almost there. All right. All right. Does everyone see this right here?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. Getting into medical school, perspective from the admissions office. All right. So what are we here today? We're here to talk about medical school, but more important than that is we're talking about the purpose of medical school, okay? You're talking about a career as a physician. The goal of today is to learn about medical school, okay? But that should not be your goal. Your end goal should become to become a physician. Same reason as how you started your undergraduate career, either at a community college or a four-year institution. That is just an objective onto your goal beyond that, okay? So same with medical school. It's going to take a lot of hard work, okay? You think it took a lot of hard work to get into where you are for undergraduate? It's even more so when it comes to medical school, okay? And we're going to talk about all the requirements. But the point of this is keep in mind, you don't want medical school to be your end goal. Your end goal is to become a physician. Now, what does that entail? 4 years of medical school. Most of our programs, if you want a straight MD, can be just 4 years. Some students take a little longer. There's program options in terms of that make it longer, where in terms of combined MD programs, combined PhD programs, combined international experience programs. Okay, or some students go at their pace, but usually most students do graduate, or rephrase that, have to graduate within 6 years. Okay, from medical school. On top of that, in terms of the instruction, after that, then there's residency, where you're on the job training essentially, and depending on your specialty and where you land, after you graduate, could be as minimal as 3 years. Says here up to 7, some can be up to 10 even, depending on your specialty and the type of hospital system you're in. So it's very important to not think of it as once I'm in medical school, I'll be stacking paper, being rich. That's not how it works. There's a lot of work dedicated to that to get to that point. But so this isn't something that is a decision that should be taken lightly. Think about why you want to go to medical school, and we'll talk about that throughout the whole time here. 80-hour work week, those are for those doctors that are young doctors that are, in residency. For a long time, that is the reality, because that's what they feel that they need to perform. And, on top of doing all the 80-hour work week in the hospital, they're doing research outside of it too. So it does combine to be 80 hours work week. That's not the norm for all doctors, but for those that are passionate about it and want to continue and develop and grow and reach their professional aspirations, that's sometimes can be the case. Licensure and practice, on top of the medical school, you have their exams during the process, and then being state certified and getting your medical license afterwards. So that's also taken into consideration too. And the last bullet point is money, dollar signs. Now that can be taken away in 2 forms. One is, of course, the earning potential, as we are aware of becoming a doctor. With an internship or residency, you are paid decent, but not very well in terms of like being a real doctor. After you go through your residency, that's when the real money comes in, But then, of course, for those, for my background, it's one of those things that's interesting, going from working with low-income first-generation students and now working with prospective medical students. The idea of the financial aspect of medical school is unique in that medical students are so laser focused, which is good because there's a lot of hard work involved. And becoming medical school, it doesn't matter in terms of cost. However, that is a reality for a lot of people. There's fee waivers for the application fee. There's costs associated with study aids and study programs. On top of that, the MCAT costs money too, and there's a bunch of other little fees that accumulate. Now there are financial aid packages available for medical students that we offer at UC San Diego School of Medicine. Okay, but it's going to be different from undergraduate. Undergraduate, there was grants, scholarships, federal work study, loans as the last resort. In medical school, it's scholarships and loans are going to be your primary options for financial aid. Our financial aid office does a very good job of aggregating scholarship resources from all over the country to combine those for our students, that they have at least 6 years, they'd be eligible for this renewed money that they do not have to pay back. Anything outside of that would be out of pocket. Now, loans, think of them in an undergraduate sense, it's kind of a last resort. Well, for medical students, it's kind of a reality. So you want to keep that in mind when you're looking at places too. What's the cost? In-state tuition, out-of-state tuition, moving, all these sorts of things. This is a big decision. And it's sometimes even a bigger decision than just picking an undergraduate institution. So something to be aware of, but there are options available to help you pay for it. So something just to be aware of throughout the process. Now, why are we here? We're talking about how to get into medical school. Okay, in most basic terms, medical schools are looking for evidence that you'll become a good doctor. Okay, that's why they make you go jump through all those hoops during the application process. Okay, now these first 3 bullet points are kind of like the main things that we're looking for when it comes to students. Number 1, excellent academic qualifications, the GPA and MCAT. Now there's an asterisk right there. It shows that these are the only measurable metrics that we use for admission determination. Okay, so that's like the only time we could say like, You need this number to move on in the process. You need this test score to move on in the process. GPA, we're looking at 3.7. MCAT, we're looking at a 5.06. Okay, those are minimums to get to the secondary application. Okay, now if you're in those range, you're in the borderline, that's fine. And that's where all the other supplemental materials come into play. That's why we do a holistic approach when it comes to admissions. Next thing is support of your faculty. Letters of recommendation are going to be very, very important. These are one of the things that really helps, can move the, let me rephrase that, can move the needle in terms of admissions decision, is how these letter writers write about you. So it's very important that you choose letter writers that know you very well. We don't want, yes, big names are kind of, they are welcome and all, but if this big name doesn't know you on your undergraduate campus or in some research facility or the hospital you volunteer at, unless they know you very well and can write a glowing letter of recommendation for you to your potential in medical school and becoming a physician, that's fine. But if they don't know you, we don't want that, because a lot of times those types of letters are, hello, I'm writing this letter on behalf of this student who attended my class. This is all the research I've done. I recommend this student for medical school. And they got this grade. That's not really telling us anything at all. It might as well be a transcript, okay? So like I said, it's very important these people know you. So faculty, supervisors, mentors, advisors, site supervisors at clinics that you might be doing, your PI for research. These are folks that can write these letters of you, okay? Now we need a minimum of 3, maximum of 5, okay? And 3 can be fine. We'll take 5 as well. But, keep in mind what's going to be said about you in letters 4 and 5 that wasn't written about you in letters 1, 2, and 3. Something to take into consideration. So you don't want to have 5 just to have 5. If these 5 are substantial and very good, submit those as well. Last but not least, extracurricular, creative, and scholarly activities. Meaningful experiences to exposure to medical professions is going to be huge. Research, clinical volunteering, clinical shadowing. Those are 3 aspects that every medical student, prospective medical student, I should say, hopes to achieve and accumulate a lot of hours and experience in that before they apply to medical school. Okay, now we look at those all the same. Those are all very important. But when it comes to those kind of meaningful experiences in the medical profession, something you got to keep in mind is when you're applying to a specific medical school, find out what their reputation is. Find out what their reputation is in the community. Find out what they're known for, what they like to talk about themselves the most. UC Health, our health system that our students and our faculty work with, first of all, we're the only medical school in San Diego. Okay, so keep that in mind. We're the only game in town, as they say. So our UC Health system, the biggest one in the city of San Diego, the 4th largest city in California, our reputation is patient care. And patient care and how we take care of our patients. And that's a reputation that we've had for years, and our faculty and administration want to keep that. So you would think that a school that values patient care and compassion would want to look at favorably, ideally, people that have that patient-facing experience, those clinical volunteering hours, those clinical shadowing experiences. While difficult to get, are definitely worthwhile. Now, I'm not discounting research at all. Research is very important. We have a ton of students that come in with a ton of research. The reason we get kind of like the research reputation, I should say, for UCSD School of Medicine is because it's closely associated with, of course, our undergraduate institution, which is known for our groundbreaking, innovative undergraduate research. So they're just people assuming, like, out in the world outside of UC San Diego, that everything's research based at UCSD, which can be true, but not when it comes to medical school admission. So something to keep in mind. We do value it. It is important, but you shouldn't break your neck over trying to compile tons of research hours when clinical volunteering, clinical shadowing are just as valuable, maybe a little more valuable in terms of moving the needle of how your application would be looked at. Next up, evidence of commitment to service, broad definition. How are you helping people? How are you helping people in the community? This is very important for certain aspects of certain programs, like our Prime program, which we'll talk about later. You know, folks that want to give back to their communities and address health disparities in their community, and, you know, being of service to their community. That's another thing. Other activities such as leadership, artistic endeavors, athletics, training. We have people from all over, all walks of life that are going to be applying to our medical school that come change their careers. Maybe they majored in something different that wasn't outside the traditional sciences. Whatever the case may be, it's how they use that experience to shape their application and maybe pursue their passion, which is becoming a doctor. Sorry, my computer's acting up. Anyway, so admissions. Each school, like I said earlier, has its own approach, and many aspects are quite similar when it comes to admission to medical school. UC San Diego, last year we had we've been averaging about 9,000 applications a year. Last year was our record number of applicants. We received 10,400 applications, the most we've ever received. Okay, and those numbers are reflected down here. Primary applications, 10,401. We sent out around 7,000 secondary applications. Of those 7,000 applications, we invited 1,100 students to interview. Now, interviews begin in late September and go all the way to March. Okay, so we're doing evaluations of applications from early fall all the way into the spring. And from there, starting in around January, February, we start doing our rolling admissions. So you've heard people talk about how certain medical schools have rolling admissions. What that means is that we don't let everyone know all at once. We get a good chunk of students. We're like, okay, this is going to be our base. And then as we start interviewing students, we're going to start admitting them. Okay, so eventually we admit about 220. We do offers to about 220 to get our class of 140 students. Okay, so that's kind of like the math of how it works. We had 10,000 applicants, and this coming fall in August, we're going to have 140 new UCSD School of Medicine students. So to give you a number, so this is a snapshot of our cohort that started last year. We're finalizing the numbers still. There's still kind of some movement of a handful of students for this incoming cohort, so don't have those numbers quite yet, but these were the numbers for last year. As you can see, 9,200 applications, 979 interviews for 152 spots. The reason the 152 spots is different from 140 was because last year, when we did those 220 admits, 152 committed to enroll here. We offered them deferment, say, hey, you could start next year or the year after. And they're like, no, we want to start this year. So we made accommodations. So that's why the class this year is a little larger. Up next, we have the averages in terms of the scores, those measurable metrics I was talking about earlier. Average GPA for admitted enrolled student, okay? Keep in mind, these are enrolled students, so they are on the higher end. 3.8 GPA, average science GPA, 3.75. Note with the science GPA, we just put that on there just as a point of reference, okay? We don't use that in determining our admissions. It definitely gives us some more insight about students, but it doesn't factor into the process. We just put it on there because it's part of the MCAT process. It's one of the numbers that it gives back to us because there are medical schools that do look at that and have that as a requirement. We do not. We look at the overall GPA, okay? So it's something to keep in mind. Average MCAT, 514. Note about the MCAT. We take your highest sitting score, okay? Highest sitting cumulative score, I should say. What that means is, let's just say you took it back in June and you got like a 504. Let's say you're taking it this month and you end up getting a 510, and you take it next month and you got a 508. We're going to use that 510 score, your highest cumulative score, and we're going to use that in determining your admission. Okay, so something to keep in mind. Some medical schools might use sectional. Some might use an average score. They call it a super score. We use your highest cumulative score. Okay, so something to keep in mind. Now, the MCAT is a very difficult exam, very long exam, and also expensive. So something to keep in mind, if you've taken it once, you not quite sure you feel comfortable, and you have the ability to take it again, I recommend taking it again. But keep in mind that you need to take it, if you're applying this cycle right now, you need to have it done before the end of this calendar year. Next up, in terms of numbers, obviously the future of medicine is female. Gender identity, we have 61% female. The year before is about 65%. First generation students, about 40%. As you can see here, there are unique jobs that students had that before they went into medical school. Top majors, of course, those are going to be the not generic ones, but the typical ones of med students, biology, molecular cell biology, biochem. We also have a ton of unique majors. We'll go into those later. Also, you see here, of the 152 that enrolled last year, 20 are UCSD alumni. Okay, we'll get into that shortly. And then as you can see in the top number, in the top right corner, California residents, 77%. Earned degrees from California, 65%. Okay. Now, these aren't strict numbers. Okay. But however, these are reflections of our applicant pool. All these numbers are. Okay. So our applicant pool is reflective of that. So most students that are from California typically want to stay in California. Okay. So they're applied to medical schools here in the state. Same with students that possibly are originally from California, went to study undergraduate in another state and decided they want to come back. Okay, so it's not a reflective, there's no bias towards California, there's no bias towards UCSD. Okay, it's just we're taking the top applicants, and our applicant pool reflects that, and it reflects pseudo California bias, but there really is not one at all. Okay. So kind of talking about the bias and everything. Here's one of the first myths. UCSD School of Medicine does not admit students from my school. It is difficult, but it's difficult everywhere. UCSD actually isn't our top feeder. Our top feeder undergraduate institution is UCLA, followed by UCSD, Berkeley, Stanford are our top four. I think USC is number 5, and then Irvine and Riverside. So we're kind of within the state, so that's where we get the most of our admitted students. And the percentages aren't very high, like I said, usually around 4 to 5% of the applicants from these schools, and like I said, there isn't a bias towards UCSD at all, and there isn't a bias against UCSD. Okay, so like I said, we are looking for the top applicants ever. Joe, maybe would you like to jump in for a second?
Yeah, just wanted to add that UCLA is always probably the #1 school for all medical schools, is because they're just so large. They're, and I think #2 is like Michigan and then Ohio State. It's just because they're just large institutions. It's not that medical schools love UCLA, although most UCLA people say that they're special, but they're not. It's just a numbers thing.
Yeah, it's a numbers thing. Yeah, it's exactly with Michigan. And you would think we would actually have a bias because 2 of our med school higher up administrators are
Michigan.
Yeah. Michigan alumni, but there's no bias towards it. So it's like, yeah, you're right. We do get a lot of Michigan applicants. And it's funny to tell a quick story. I did a virtual presentation to University of Michigan students back in February. So February in San Diego versus February in Michigan. You could imagine. So I was making some small talk at the beginning of the presentation. I'm like, hey, how's the weather out there? And they all frowned in unison. It was so great. I was like, oh man, well, I'm wearing a sweater, but it's like 65 degrees here. So it's all right. And they just didn't like that. But it was just funny. It was just one of those things. So it's very important is also location, and where you want to go is going to be very important. So things that you have to take into consideration. Next up, UCSD is a basic science school, and you have to be a life science major to be accepted. As I said earlier, that is not the case. Majority of the students, yes, they will reflect that, biology, biochem, but there's majors from all over the place. political science, philosophy, linguistics, music, art, exercise and nutritional sciences, all kinds of stuff. So it don't feel that your majors locked you into like, I can't apply to medical school. You can apply to medical school. There's the GPA and the MCAT. Everything else is about you and who you are as an individual and your passion to practice medicine. Okay. Now, I feel like this is going to be a lot of the questions I might get. So I created a slide for this. At UCSD School of Medicine, we have course recommendations, okay? And it's hard for me to say that coming from an undergraduate background. I'm used to, for those of you here in California, the A through G requirements to get into undergraduate for UCs and Cal States. I'm used to the requirement part. So saying recommended courses is kind of new to me. It's still new to me. So our recommended courses, what that means is you will still be considered for admission despite not completing this entire course list. Okay, so something to keep in mind. We need to obviously do most of them, but if you're missing maybe a quarter of something or one semester of one lab, it's not going to be held against you. Okay, so 1 one academic year of biology, 1 academic year of chemistry, biochem, OChem, physics, calculus or statistics, and lab coursework for all those corresponding courses outside of the calculus and stats. Okay, those are the courses that are recommended, not required, but recommended, and ideally you take them. Something now under here are some things to keep in mind. These are all college level courses, okay? So no remedial courses are going to make up for any of these, okay? 100 level and above. These can be covered by AP exam credit that you took in high school. Very important. A little caveat with that is it will meet the requirement. However, they do recommend if it's one of the sciences, they do recommend that you take an upper division in a science in that field, in that subject, just to, for updates, just more recent knowledge. Keep in mind with calculus and stats though, AP credit would knock that out and not have to do that. I learned that from a student earlier today. We had a presentation. She said she took the AP exam in high school and did not have to touch math the rest of her time in college. And she's a current second year medical student. Something to keep in mind. These courses can be taken at a community college. I cannot stress that enough. These courses, these equivalent courses can be taken at a community college. We are not going to look down upon them as lesser than or anything like that. Okay, something very important. Because when you graduate from your 4-year institution, there's not going to be an asterisk next to your name saying earned their degree in sociology or whatever, or biology. And it's going to have an asterisk that says, oh, but they attended community college. Doesn't say that. It doesn't say that on the how we evaluate your courses. We see that you took the course. We saw that it's an equivalent, and that's all that matters. So don't feel any kind of hesitation that you feel like, well, I'm taking these courses at a community college. They're not good enough, or they're not going to look down upon it. Now, I said earlier, I only speak on behalf of UCSD. Some other medical schools might see it differently. At UCSD, we do not. Okay. Last but not least, also courses can be taken from accredited online extension programs. So if you're missing one of these courses that you feel like you want to take just for your general knowledge, and the best, most convenient option for you is an online extension course, if it's from an accredited institution, like let's just say you're all in Northern California, right? So let's just say Berkeley, UC Davis, Stanford has online extension courses that you can take and to meet requirements that will help your GPA. Take it, and it will be used towards your admission. So something to keep in mind, okay? And of course, like I said earlier, applicants that are missing any of these courses will still be considered for admission. Another admission myth. There is a checklist of a successful applicant with regards to extracurricular activities. I don't want to read all this, but there isn't a checklist. There isn't a cookie cutter way. There is kind of like a template, obviously. High GPA involvement in the medical field, community service, leadership activities, that sort of thing. But there really is no checklist. Okay. It's do what you want to do. Okay. Now, one of the things I talk about, especially for those of you that are earlier in your undergraduate careers right now, in-depth experiences are generally preferred as opposed to dozens of smaller experiences. What that means is usually, your first couple years in college, you're in a new environment, you want to meet a lot of people. So you go to like the student fair the first couple weeks, and then you sign up for all these student organizations. It's great. I am not discouraging it at all. It's a great way to meet people. It's a great way to get involved, great way to get connected. And it's usually somehow associated, you'll come across a free t-shirt or free food, whatever, those are all great ways to get involved on campus. However, for medical school purposes, we want to see, dedicated commitment to something. And so that's where these in-depth experiences come from. While, a wide variety of experiences is great, it's not going to show who you are. Okay. These in-depth experiences. So maybe focus on like one or two organizations that you really dive into when you're an undergraduate. You take up exec positions, you grow the organization, you start your own organization, or you do something at your internship site or your volunteer site where you create your own programming and do those kind of things. Those kinds of things that show demonstrated passion are going to be key in identifying who you are and what you want to do. Okay, a lot of emails I get from students is, I'm a non-traditional student and I was wondering, and they tell me their story, and it's the same story I read 5 minutes ago from a student with the same opening. I'm a non-traditional applicant. It's all the same thing. Everyone's non-traditional. Everyone has a very unique story to tell. And it's very important that your story has some substance behind it. So that's why the in-depth experiences will go a long way in doing that for you. And of course, they clearly define you as an applicant. You're more likely to achieve leadership positions. And of course, more likely to get stronger letters of recommendation from people that you want them from. Okay. Once again, there is a checklist of successful applicants. So one of the things with medical school is we do not provide feedback on your application. We don't, most schools do not. Maybe some smaller medical schools do, but we do not. We receive thousands of applications with thousands of experiences and thousands of letters and all this stuff. And we can't really because of the holistic approach of it, there really is no pinpointing something to be like, you didn't get into medical school because of this or this or this. Okay. What I forgot where I was going. We can't show you that because there's no way to show it. We can't point that out. But don't feel that if you didn't get into medical school, it's a fault of your own. Okay. Don't feel like I failed, I didn't do this, I wasn't good enough. That's not the case. If you got a secondary application, you're doing great. You're doing just great. You're one of the top undergraduates in the country. If you got an interview, you're one of the top 1% applicants in the country, okay? Getting an interview. And if you didn't get in past that, hey, you're in the top 1%. It wasn't anything bad that you did or bad about your application. Unfortunately, it's just there was someone else or someone better. And that's the reality of medical school. Now, the reality of that too is that it's okay to be a reapplicant. That's why it's a term. That's why it's a topic that's frequently discussed in these type of presentations, that it's okay to reapply. Now, what you do and how you reapply, that's a different story. But don't feel that if you didn't get in your first time, don't feel that you can apply again. You can apply again. We have students in our program that have applied 3-4 times and eventually got in. So don't let that discourage you, okay? Bottom line is do something, do what you like to do, not what you think you have to do. There's a lot of time, and the student that was helping me earlier today, she was saying how like a lot of the advisors from her undergraduate were telling her, oh, you need to do this, 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 and giving her that checklist of what they needed to do. But it was just kind of really just doing lip service to just like the overall things of what a medical school would be looking for, but not really telling her story of why she wanted to become a doctor. So that's going to be important. That's going to move the needle along in making a favorable decision in your favor when it comes to applying to medical school. So another admissions myth, if my grades are weak, I can compensate with my MCAT scores. That is typically not the case here at UCSD and typically not the case anywhere. A career in medicine is about continuing education, hard work, and diligence. There are some factors that may have prevented good academic performance, and there's ways that you can articulate that in your application in terms of any adversity when it comes to your experience as an undergraduate, after graduation, leading up to undergraduate, or even in your applying to medical school, taking the MCAT, things like that of that nature. Those can all be factored in and talked about in your application. Now, the key thing is like if your scores aren't good enough, either GPA or MCAT, it's not going to help you move along the process, but that's where a full detail telling your story and being authentic and having a really good application does help, because that personal statement, those letters of recommendation, if you're on that borderline where some of these students are that don't have the quite high enough GPA but have the good enough MCAT and vice versa, those are the students that would move along in the process. So it's very important to every part of this process, you're doing your best to put your best foot forward. And a caveat when it comes to the GPA is we do an upward trend of a GPA, okay? So it's definitely noticed by our admissions committee. So what that means is if you're in a master's or in a post-bac, we see that, okay, you're demonstrating that you want to improve your GPA, improve your chances. So you've taken these courses to improve your GPA, and that was something that we'll notice, especially with a post-bac program. Now, I'm not encouraging this like, hey, do a post-bac, you'll get in. That's not the case, but it definitely does help. Same with the master's, same with your last 2 years undergraduate GPA. We understand that the first 2 years, typically students don't do as well in undergraduate. So we look at that upper trend of a GPA, see where it's going. We're looking for that academic potential. Okay, as it gets there, like I said, that borderline case, those are those kind of things that, are you improving? Are you demonstrating to our committee that you would succeed academically here in medical school? All right. So we talked about the myths, we talked about requirements. Now we're talking about how to apply. Okay. Pay attention to details. Right now, we're in the application cycle. It opened up a couple weeks ago, and it's going to be going until middle of October. Make sure you pay attention to deadlines. Right now, some medical schools are starting to send out some secondary applications. We started sending out secondary applications. We've already received a handful of completed secondary applications. So those come with their own deadlines as well. So pay attention to those, because we do not extend them. No applications are extended at all. So keep that in mind. Make sure all your contact information is accurate, because we will be emailing you ad nauseum. Like even I get the email updates that you guys get. And I'm like, oh my God. But it's very important just to keep you on track, to make sure that you're doing what you're doing. And with our emails, there's no read between the lines, kind of like hidden meaning. We are very direct and straightforward and try to be as transparent as possible when it comes to our policies and our deadlines and how everything works in terms of instructions, okay? Because we want to help you out, okay? MCAT, make sure you sign up for it, okay? Is it needed? Yes, it is. You want to make sure you have it done, but if you're applying this cycle, you have it taken before the end of this calendar year. If you took it, if you're still applying this, if you're applying this cycle and you take it in 2026, we're not using that score towards admission for this cycle. Something to keep in mind. And part of the whole thing with the MCAT, we only go back 4 years. So any score taken before 2022, it's going to be on a case-by-case basis that we had to review as an admission staff. Okay. And the reason for that is because MCAT is kind of like the measurement barometer of your recent academic performance, recent knowledge. Okay, so that's why students that like went to undergraduate 10 years ago, like, oh, I was wondering if I could apply because I was an undergraduate so many years ago. Do I need to take any courses? Like, no, your GPA is going to be your GPA. That's not going to change. That's what we're going to look at. Your MCAT is the more recency of knowledge that we want to measure. But if you want to improve your GPA, that's where post-bac and online extension courses come into play. Definitely you can submit the primary application without your MCAT. However, you cannot receive your secondary application until we get an official MCAT from MCAS, okay? And secondary applications are automatic for students with competitive grades and MCAT scores. So when I was talking about that MCAT 506 and a 3.7 GPA, the students above that, they'll automatically get sent to secondary. And those are verified by our MCAS system, AMCAS, and AAMC is the general umbrella of all medical schools. They verify all that. They have their online system verifies individual courses and GPAs and MCAT scores. So once they have that, it's official and it's sent to us that you meet our threshold requirements, we send that to you automatically. Everyone else we'd have to review. And those were those borderline cases I was mentioning earlier, okay? Secondary application, the next part, and this is the most important part, I feel, in my opinion, and everyone will say differently, is the most important part of the application process. If you get a secondary application, congratulations, but this is where you're going to have to really articulate your story. Okay, so what this means is you're going to have to rewrite your personal statement to make it like an autobiographical sketch. By the way, there are instructions and prompts, and also very important, character limits in these sections, okay? So you want to make sure you get your point across within the character limits. Very, very important. You don't want to do bullet points. You don't want to tell a gigantical narrative where you finish the story halfway through, okay? You want to tell a full story within the character limits. Okay, it's something very, very important. Reformatted extracurricular activities. It's going to ask you again to write about your extracurricular activities. At one point, it's going to ask you for 3 meaningful experiences. And these could be meaningful experiences that you addressed in your primary application that you could either talk about some more in your secondary or write 3 other experiences. Okay, there's no wrong way to fill out that part of the application. Okay. Family background information is going to be very important too. We want to know about your background, where you came from, where you live, how you, that kind of stuff. Letters of recommendation. I mentioned that earlier. We have a minimum of 3, maximum of 5. They do not need to come from 2 science, 1 non-science, 1 faculty, 1. Ideally, we would like to see at least 1 from an academic source from a faculty member, ideally, but not required. So like I said, mentor, advisor, site leader, internship coordinator, whatever the case may be, someone that could write a good letter about you that knows you very well, can write to your potential. Okay. And kind of goes to that point here at the bottom. It's helpful the letters write know you well. Personal touch is more important than a big name. Okay. The secondary review, this is the part that takes the longest. This is about like the 3 to 4 month process of just waiting because we're getting tons of applications. That's why our admissions is always rolling. Okay, so like I said, we do a big chunk kind of at the beginning of the year. And then as we're continuing interviews and we're doing selection meetings, then we start admitting students to get our full class. And we usually wrap that up by, I want to say, somewhere around St. Patrick's Day, so middle of March. It's kind of when we're getting close to wrapping up decisions. They review the letters of recommendation, activities, your biographical sketch, and then this determines whether or not you get an interview. Okay, detail provided is gonna help us and give you credit for what you've done. So don't be humble in this process. And kind of overarching theme when it comes to applying to medical school is that this is a snapshot in your current journey to medical school. What I mean by that is whatever experiences you're doing right now or you have done, that's going on your application. Now, let's just say you submit your application today, July, whatever day it is, 15th, 16th, 16th, July 16th, right? And then on July 20th, let's just say you are offered an internship and you start on the 21st. You have this amazing experience, you meet all these great people, you work with patients, and you have all this research stuff, all this cool clinical stuff, and you meet one of the site supervisors. They're awesome, and they agree to write you an awesome letter of recommendation. We will not use that because that wasn't part of your application. So timing is important, not as important as the content, but it can be a factor. So if you have these experiences that you might be lining up or might be coming up or just starting, make sure that you project those hours, and maybe is this someone that's going to write a letter for you, that kind of thing. Timing is important. Okay, so this is a snapshot where you are currently, not I might get this. Is do you have it or not? And if it's not part of your application, it's not something that you can add because we will not look at it. Something very important to keep in mind when you're doing your experiences. All righty. So you've applied, you got a primary. You moved on to the secondary application, right? The secondary application, they give you a month. They give you 1 month to fill that out. Okay, it's a month and a couple days, but that's besides the point. You have a month to fill that out. You get selected for interview. Now you have an interview. Interviews for medical school are required. For us, we call them MMIs, multiple mini interviews. We do ours virtual, all online via Zoom. And what they are is you have a one-on-one. You first get an introduction. You meet our dean, and then you meet one of our staff members, myself or one of my colleagues. We go over the day with you in terms of like what to expect and the instructions for the day. At that point, you will be placed in the breakout rooms online with our medical faculty. And then after a couple of announcements, you're going to be given the prompt, and you're given 2 minutes with that prompt. In those 2 minutes, you can take notes, do whatever you want. Do not use AI. And then after those 2 minutes, you're going to get an announcement that says, please turn on your cameras and microphones and begin your response. From there, you have 8 minutes to complete your response per scenario. Okay, and along those 8 minutes, you will be given reminders like, hey, interviewers, start asking your follow-up questions. You have 1 minute remaining. That concludes the interview. Get ready to move on to the next room. Okay, so that's how it works. You do that. You shuffle through 8 different scenarios, and then you kind of do a debrief with our medical students. So it's just you and 3 or 4 current medical students, no faculty, no administrators. So you really get to talk to them about their experiences at UCSD Medical School. Okay. Now, very, very important when it comes to the interview process. I highlighted this specifically. 8 scenarios for the applicants to address. I put scenarios in quotation marks because this isn't your traditional interview in that we're not asking you questions. Okay, we're presenting to you scenarios. Now, the difference between a question with questions, there's a right or wrong answer. With scenarios, it's what would you do and why. And that's very important for us is because for our medical faculty in determining the potential of an applicant, we want to see how their mind works. We want to see their critical thinking skills. We want to know how they would act in certain situations. Related to the that they would encounter in the medical field, in the hospitals, with their physicians and with their patients and stuff like that. These are no technical questions at all. These are just scenario questions. Now, the important thing of this, and I can say one thing is stay on topic. Very, very important. Stay on topic. Whatever they're talking about, talk about that. Stay on topic with that. Now, there's gonna be times where you're gonna have like this, you're gonna feel compelled to kind of like, they haven't asked me about this research experience or this like internship I did, and you just like start blurting it out and start to, oh, by the way, I did this and this. That, I mean, that's cool and all, don't get me wrong, and it's on your application, that's great. But did it have to do with that question in that scenario? No, it didn't. And that's a lot of fault that happens with a lot of students is they try to jam a square peg into a round hole because it's not really applying to the scenario that they're asking. Very important. Stay on topic. There are going to be opportunities within the framework of those 8 individual scenarios where you can talk about an applicable experience or connect it to that. Keep in mind, our interview system, the way our interviews are worked and conducted, is they're all closed file interviews. That means everyone interviewing you only knows your name and that's it. They don't know your undergraduate institution, your AMCAT score. They don't know your AMCAT score until they've made a decision whether or not they've admitted you. Okay? They know, so they don't know any of that. So they're going in blind and just meeting this new person that just happened to apply to medical school. Now they know obviously you are a very impressive candidate because you got that far, but it's not the end of it. So you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. You definitely practice with someone that knows you very well, someone that can bounce feedback off you, because it's going to be very important that you just articulate your experiences, stay on topic, and apply your information as much as possible. Now, you didn't hear this from me, okay? I am not saying this right now, okay? We make sure our students sign an NDA before they do their interviews, which means that they are sworn by a piece of paper saying that they will keep all that information confidential and will not release it at all. And then you swear to God, within like half an hour, it's probably online somewhere. So do with that what you would, okay? We can't control people what they do outside of it, but there are resources out there. You can, there are services out there that help prepare for MMI and helping you apply for the medical school process. You can look at those if that's an option for you. If you have the resources for that, highly recommend doing that. These people care about what they do and they want to help you out. But if you can also go to someone that works at the medical school and ask them questions. Definitely email helps. Would definitely help. And if being at these kind of events is super helpful as well. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. Like I said, they're not technical questions. They just want to get to know you, how your mind works. And because one of the things in the doctors in the back of their head is this someone in the future I could see myself working next to in the hospital? Okay. And I asked that to several doctors. I'm like, hey, so is this something you take into consideration when you're interviewing? They're like, that's all I think about. Like, is this someone that I want there to be on the side when stuff's going down? Like, would I be able to trust this person? Okay. So there's a lot of factors going on. They're like, oh, wow, this person had a 3.9 GPA. Oh, that's why it's a holistic approach. We're looking at everything, not just the numbers. We're looking at everything and what it takes for you to be a successful student, because we want we want to get the best and the brightest, of course, but we want our students to get here and succeed. Okay, we could just admit anyone we want, everyone could flunk out. That wouldn't be a good medical school, right? We want students to perform and do well, learn, and take it out into the field after they graduate. All righty. That being said, that is the end of the formal presentation part. Now, Matthew, how do we want to handle questions?
So I'm just gonna ask you from the Q&A, and
All right, cool.
yeah. So we
All
can
right.
start if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Alrighty, so this person says that they want to strengthen their academics, so they're applying to like post-bac programs. Is there anything else you would suggest to become a more competitive applicant for UCSD?
Well, academic wise, yeah, post-bac is definitely one of uh the key, a very important tool for those that want to, improve their academic chances, those measurable metrics I was talking about earlier. But I feel that, that demonstrated passion I've been talking about, in those research experiences, in those clinical experiences are going to be helpful for sure. For us, explore those clinical opportunities, those patient-facing opportunities are going to be oh so valuable in your application and telling your story. I don't think I really talked about this, but overall, the main thing your application should be doing is portraying your motivation for medicine. What is your motivation for medicine? That should be the question you should be asking yourself. And when you think about it, articulate that in your application. There's a lot of times when I'm in those meetings with the selection committee and they're talking about the applicants, they're talking about this applicant with amazing GPA, all kinds of service, all kinds of research, all kinds of but they don't talk about why medicine. They just been doing all the things just because they were told to do these things, but the committee doesn't see the why. The why is going to be just as important. Okay, so just articulate that, and that so when you're looking for those experiences to help out your application, find those opportunities in the field to get to clinical experiences would definitely help. I know they're few and far between. They're difficult to come by, and I wish there was a way I could be like, oh, just go here. I wish there was a way to do that, but every community, every organization, every hospital, every clinic is going to be unique. So definitely, it's all about just hitting the streets and, just seeing what's available out there. That will help greatly.
Yeah, just don't go for the checklists. You got to make sure it actually fits.
Yeah.
Someone is asking if you could repeat the baseline for the secondary application, the GPA, the minimum GPA and minimum MCAT.
Oh, 3.7 and 5.06.
And then someone asks, kind of on that same vein, if you can appeal if you're borderline, like let's say you're 505.
That's what the review is for, and so that's part of the application. That's why the other application materials are going to be
Oh,
very
right. Yeah.
yeah. So if there was a certain, let's just say you got a 505, and let's just say randomly there was what's there was an earthquake. Let's just say an earthquake, and the test center just got condemned, and you were all set to go, and it got delayed, and then all this stuff happened, and there was hardship involved that delayed your test and delayed possibly your highest score. You can put that in your application in terms of endured hardship, like something that affected your score. That's you could be proactive in the appeal, but we're still looking at all that information anyway. So the appeals really don't work because they do and they don't. I mean, you can try by all means. In my experience, I haven't seen any, but it is something that students can do. But that's why we try to be proactive with it. We say hey, if there were any hardships that affected you in the application process, write about that. Put that in your application. Okay, because then that will get you ahead of the game. Speaking.
All right. Hopefully, last one for now about GPA and MCAT. Someone asked
Mhm.
about minimum competitive GPA. Would you say it's like the average, like a 514, and like 3.8, or would you say try to get it higher? What would you say about that? Or
Those numbers right there at 3.8, 5.14, you're looking solid. Because at that point, any anxiety, if you had a 3.8 and a 5.14 MCAT, hypothetically, that's anxiety. Your numbers have done the work. The GPA and MCAT, they've done their job. You're in the door. You're in the door to now demonstrate who you are to the committee. And that's through your secondary application. The secondary application, like I said, is going to be a good chunk of what they look at. Okay. And in talking with that medical student I was presenting with earlier, she doesn't even know how she got in. she got in, and she was asking like, is there any way I could find out from who reviewed it? I'm like, oh no, but it's one of those things like, it's just whatever the main thing is, doing your best, putting your best foot forward, and it's a holistic approach. But yeah, if you're 514, 3.8 GPA, that's all done. You don't have to worry about that anymore. It's done its job. Now it's you and articulating that. It's going to help you out. All right, go ahead, Matthew.
Alrighty, so now this one is about where you go for undergrad. So let's say, I know you already talked about UCSD and the bias around that, but let's say if you're out of state or international students, is there anything towards that?
Okay, two things. Out of state doesn't matter. In-state, out of state does not matter because we measure them all the same. That's why there's no bias towards UCSD or towards UC campuses or California schools. Okay, we want to get the top applicants out into our school. International students, we do not admit for our medical school. So that's something that I'm trying to explore. But for right now, it's kind of one of those things where if you're an international student or a non-US citizen, I wouldn't apply. Only reason being is because it would be a waste of time and energy and money because you would automatically be denied. Despite whatever stuff you've done, I'm sure it's amazing. I'm sure it's great. It's just that's the first thing that would come up. That would be flagged on your application and that you would automatically not be considered for admission. Now, I'm sure you could be, and you can look up the AAMC, which is the kind of the umbrella which all medical schools operate under. They have a feature called MSAR, which is medical school admission requirements. And I think there's some kind of minimal fee with it, like annual membership fee. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to explore medical schools across the country and look for those requirements. So like, does in-state residency apply towards admission? Do they accept international students? Something to keep in mind. So there are schools out there like that. Unfortunately, not ours.
Yeah, the 1 year fee or the 1 year subscription for the MSAR is $28 and 36 for 2 years. So
oh yeah, get 2 years, people. Get 2 years.
I just got it like the other day. So
yeah, definitely worth it. Give me 1 second, Matthew. I'm dog sitting. I gotta let the dogs in. I'll be right back. Get in. All right. Hopefully they don't make too much noise. Anywho, continue.
all right, so the next one is going to be about letters of recommendation. Does it matter if they're from a letter of from a CC professor,
Nope.
from a
Does not.
from a DO physician?
Nope. Does not matter. Someone that knows you and could write to your potential and why you want to become a physician and go to medical school, yes. So it does not matter who.
Then they ask if there is if they have a letter from 2024.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Is there any limit, would you say,
with letters of recommendation, recency definitely does help. With courses, like I said earlier, if you took courses, that's your GPA, undergraduate GPA, no matter what. You can improve it with MCAT. I'm sorry, post-bac or a master's degree if you like. But with letters of recommendation, we would want more recent ones if you can. But I know there are students that are 10, 12 years out of undergraduate and they went on a different career path and then they have these letters. I'm like, And those are like borderline ones. We tell them you can maybe submit one of them that you feel that might be pertinent, but ideally something within the last couple of years.
Perfect. Alrighty. So the next one, someone says, um, because of how competitive UCSD is, could you like reiterate, I guess, some of the specific experiences or values, like generally, I guess, that'd be important to AdCom for students with lower stats?
Lois, I would just say demonstrated passion in the medical field, articulating that experience of why medicine. For instance, our one of our combined programs, Prime, um, it's a combined master's and MD program where a lot of those students they talk about that a lot where they want to give back to their community and they feel like getting their medical degree and going back and addressing some of the health disparities in their community where they grew up that they experienced in their lives as a youth can be addressed, them becoming a doctor. And so, they're articulating those types of experiences. So, clinical experience being out in the community definitely does help. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. Obviously you want to do something important and of value, but in terms of like, those borderline experiences, that's subjective really up to the committee. Like, what do they value? So, I said our reputation is patient care and compassion. That's very valuable to our medical faculty and just our overall health system. How we take care of our patients is very important to us. So I would say, kind of talking about that, how would you help patients and that kind of thing, and how are you of service and helping those in need, that kind of stuff could definitely help.
So now a lot of people are asking, oh, if you have something to say.
But no,
Oh, so a lot of people are asking about the autobiographical secondary, like how should they approach it, or any key competencies to look for in it or write about?
um, no, not no real key competencies. Um, just like I said, and it's gonna sound like a broken record, but just being your authentic self is gonna be very important. Um, there's a lot of times when students and all right, I'm gonna give an example. I had a student had a concern at one of our office hours, which I'll make sure to do a plug at the end. But she wasn't comfortable asking it in front of everyone in the office hours. So we did a Zoom on the side. And one of her main things was her concern was with the autobiographical sketch is that she felt that like her background with her family, um, low income, not really no one in the medical field that had as an example, but her parents and her parents experiences with health problems and where they came from, how they supported her, how they supported each other and that. And she felt that like she wanted to write about that in her autobiographical sketch, but she didn't want that to be the main thing because she felt that like I don't want my application to be a sob story to get into medical school. And I'm like, oh, so like, and I've heard the term used by current medical students in the idea of like the phrase they use was trauma dump, like, oh, all this stuff happened to me. And I understand like there's a lot of things that happen in a lot of people's lives that affected you, good and bad, that affected you who you are today, and like kind of set the course on your journey. And so for her, I told her it's like it's nothing that you should really be ashamed about. It made you who you are. So kind of focus on the positive aspects of it, of how it got you to where you are right now, and making the decision to go to medical school in spite of these things, or because of these things, you allowed you to be grateful for the experience of growing up in a low income household with parents that didn't speak English and, was able to navigate education and higher education to potentially get into medical school. So there really isn't one thing, there are going to be some bad stuff that happens to you that like shaped you, and like, do you feel comfortable writing about that? It's obviously it's not something that gets like blurred about, like we tell everyone like, oh my God, guess what this student said. No, that doesn't happen. But just know that if you want to tell your authentic truth, what aspects of it, good or bad, do you have to write? Do you feel comfortable writing about to tell your story? Because at the end of the day, you want to show why you want to become a physician, not why you want to get a medical school, why you want to become a physician, why you want to become a doctor to help and heal people. That's going to be the main thing.
Okay, thank you. So someone asked, what are common pitfalls you see in applicants that otherwise have strong academic metrics?
I would say for those, it's just very matter of fact applications from my experience in hearing from the committee. Oh, I did this, 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 I did this. And they're doing all these things, but it kind of, you're missing the part of why medicine? What's your motivation in medicine? You're doing kind of like a checklist, but there's real no purpose behind it. You're just kind of like, well, I think that's what I have to do to get into medical school. I'm going to do all these things, and they don't do them well or anything. They just kind of just like, oh, I did a couple hours. I did all this research at this institute, and it's a big chunk of their application. Then you actually go into it, and it's like they did 60 hours at this one site, and it's like 60 hours. That's like 3 weeks of a part-time job, like that's not much, so it's like how you articulate and everything. So yeah, I go with, I just write your truth.
Ready, so for the next question, someone asked about how do you view applicants with a master's in public health, and also whether or not the Prime program accepts students with a master's in public health, if you know anything about that.
Okay, so how they view public health, I think very positively for sure, because you do have some insight and context about like the health system and everything, and it will give you some good talking points in terms of articulating your passion and your why medicine, your motivation in medicine. Now, in terms of our Prime program, which one of the options for the masters is that, that's actually a very great question, because I know it's a 5-year program, and it's one of those combined programs that, in addition to the 5 years, that fifth year is to do your 1-year master's program, which you still have to apply to, but you're gonna get it. You got it in medical school, you're gonna get it to a grad program. Is that there's a financial aid component attached to it, which is $20,000 a year. Free money for you being in Prime program. That's why we only have like 12, 15 spots per year. So, and part of it is a master's program, but can students with a master's apply? I do not know that. I want to say yes. And then that fifth year can just be whatever, or maybe a second master's. If you're pursuing a master's in another field, you can do that. But it's not going to help you in terms of like, oh, they have a master's, let's get them in. No, with all our supplemental programs, like our combined PhD program, MD, GHAC, our 10 Family Scholars program, which you might have heard about. All those programs, you need to be an MD first. You're applying to our MD program first and foremost. If you get into our MD program, then you're in for, and you indicated that on your secondary application, does not tie you to that program, just indicates your interest in those types of programs, which there's a little blurb during the secondary for those of you that may have seen it already. That means you've indicated just interest. You get into the MD program. From there, we'll look at all our admits and be like, okay, all these students are interested in our Prime program. All these students are interested in Prime Tide. Prime Tide is unique, is it for indigenous native populations. and our 10 Family Scholar, which is an international component program. It's his first year. We only have 2 students right now. It's hoping to grow over the next couple of years. Or GHAC, our Global Health Academic Concentration. Students have to get into the MD program first, then they're considered for those other ones. And those are selected by the medical faculty that work in those programs. So, but in terms of the masters and everything, email me. They have my information. I'll look that up for you. Okay.
Oh, alrighty, perfect. So the next person is asking a lot of questions actually about courses. Do you care if they were taken at a community college?
Nope.
Is AP Calculus credit taken into consideration or no?
Yes, it is.
Is there an expiration date on recommended courses?
No.
Do you care if the lab courses are online, like for example for physics?
No. Accredited online institutions. Very important.
And then this person asks, is it fine if they're through online or extension programs?
Yeah, that's fine. Ideally, extension programs are ideal because they're associated with an accredited institution. So those are the ideal ones. Those are the best structured and easily accessible. So definitely I'd recommend those. I don't know if we have any I know we have some online extension courses, but our post-bac program I think is in person and it's very thorough. Our biomedical science one is huge. So just something to keep in mind too.
Alrighty, so for the next question, someone asks, if their dream school is attend UCSD for med school, is there any way they can indicate that, or should they do anything special, like perhaps do research or interact with staff members?
No, just they can indicate that on the application and it gets indicated a lot. So I mean you're not doing anything bad. Like I really want to get into this school. Like that's fine. It's understandable. A lot of students want to come to our school. Couple highlights is that number one, we are literally the only game in town. We're the only medical school in the San Diego area. So something to keep in mind when it comes to that is for a lot of medical school, at least the second half, it's a lot of hospital, site work. You're going to be doing a lot of instruction at hospitals and, clinical rotations and stuff. Now, if you're at a medical school, the only one in the city with a large medical system in place, it's pretty easy to find your spots and everything where you're going to go. As opposed to you're in a large concentrated metropolitan area, like let's just say, and I'm from there, so I hate saying it, but Los Angeles, for example, with like 5 medical schools, right? And there's 5 medical schools there. That means it's very competitive for those instructional positions. Okay, so it's like you might not have the ideal location of like, okay, well, I'm doing my rotation just down the street right here or down the freeway. Like, no, you're talking about an hour drive. And in the East Coast, sometimes you're going to another state to do your rotations, So it's something to keep in mind. There's logistical aspects of this too. And of course, the weather's nice here in San Diego, so you can't beat that. And we're near the beach. So yeah, so I mean, there's different aspects of why you would choose.
Perfect. My sister went to UCSD for undergrad.
Oh,
So
cool.
I know it's great weather there.
Yeah.
So someone asked if they're like some of their experiences are from CC. So if they're not for as long, what would you, I guess, suggest is a minimum length, I guess, for experiences, if it's for like, let's say, clinical experience or research?
I would just say anything that you would feel would help in your application to kind of like flesh out your experiences because the especially the secondary application and I'm not even counting the interview because like I said that's like 1% of applicants get that is that this is their opportunity to meet you. This is how they get to know you. They're not going to get to know you like through networking sessions or anything like that. Like, so make sure the words on the page jump out to them. Okay. So when it comes to maybe you did like a couple weeks, of a clinical experience, Was that impactful? Did you like it? What did you get? If it was transformative, write about that. Even if it was only 2 weeks versus like this internship you had for 6 months, you just did it just because it paid and it checked the box as opposed to this one that was only 2 weeks. That was amazing, So what, right? Everything's subjective. It's all about you because we can't even predict like who's going to read your application and who's going to do all that because that's why we try to eliminate as much as the bias as possible when it comes to the application process and the interviews. So they have as much as just objective information about you as they can. And they're making a decision based on the top medical school student that we would like. So that's something to keep in mind.
So a lot of people are asking about their GPAs again, but asking whether like do you separate it between undergraduate, so like and also between like community college and your actual 4 year, and then also
It's
like
all
undergraduate and undergraduate, and then like masters and undergraduate.
okay. So overall, the main one we look at is undergraduate GPA. First and foremost, that's what we're looking at. Okay, so if you got a master's, if you went back to get post-bac work to improve your GPA, and your GPA, like, we saw that upward trend of, your GPA going up, like, oh, hey, they did okay. Like, let's just say they had like a 3.4 undergraduate. Let's just throw out a random number, 3.4 undergraduate. It's like, that's not that great for medical school, but they went into a post-bac and then they got like a 3.8 GPA in post-bac, which is highly concentrated, intense academic training, essentially for 1 year where you're just taking classes. And so that's a demonstration to us that you're working on your academics to improve your chances. So for those cases, they kind of land in that borderline. Like you're not going to move through automatically. Once those students get through, then we go through the review process and we look at everything like, okay, then we look, okay, their GPA's gone up because of post-bac, it puts them in the range. Let's get them a secondary. Okay. So that's how it works. So it's first the automatic ones, then we look at all those borderline ones. And like I said in the presentation, that's when we go into further consideration. That's where we're looking at the whole application because it makes it easier for us to process that many applications where we at least have that threshold of automatically move forward and then gives you more time to work on the secondary.
So this next person asks about letters of recommendation. Um, for committee letters, can you submit additional ones besides that one?
Yeah, you can. So let's just say a committee letter would count for three letters, right? So that can meet the bare minimum. Now, if you wanted to submit 2 more, you can, and we're not going to hold it against you. Now, if you submit more than that, we're not going to hold that against you. We're not going to penalize you, but we're going to read probably only 5. So the committee member, the committee letter, and 2 more. Which 2? So that's something you don't want to leave that up to chance, especially if one isn't as flattering. Because once again, like I said, that's an opportunity for the needle to move in your favor if you get a really good letter of recommendation. I've seen it happen where it's like, well, reading their letter from their faculty is like, oh, in their time as a research assistant was probably one of the top 5 I've ever had, and I've been doing this for 20 years. And that might be generic, but who knows? I don't know. But they're getting these glowing letters of recommendation, and it's like, oh, okay, well, let's think about this for a second. Gives them some time to consider your overall application again. Okay, these are long meetings, by the way, people. I don't want to sit there forever, but they are very thorough in their work. We're not just doing this to make you do all this work to waste your time. So we'll be like, oh, we'll just take these kids. No, They read every application, whether you submitted your application last week or you're going to submit it October 14th. We review them all the same. Now, the key thing to help you, kind of a little inside baseball from me, is that I would recommend, if you're applying for this cycle or any cycle, try to have your primary application completed by Labor Day. Give yourself an internal deadline of Labor Day. Now, that's not going to help you along the way. You'll get your secondary quicker and all that. You might get an interview invite sooner, but it's not going to help you get admission. It helps you move along the process. And especially for those borderline students, you want us to make an easier decision in the summer rather than a more difficult decision in October. Okay? Because if we get, and you're borderline, you're right there, but it's like we're kind of already filling up on secondaries in our interview spots. Like, it has to be a really compelling application. So, like I said, you want to focus on it sooner, have us make a relatively easier decision than just kind of like hopefully it works out. It will work out most of the time, but you just never know. That's why we tell folks, submit them, follow the deadline, but kind of give yourself the like Labor Day kind of deadline for yourself.
Do you have any time for more questions, or it's 5:30? So
Not really, but I want to say want to do my plug, if that's okay, Matthew. Two plugs. First of all, I want to say thank you everyone for being paying attention. And if I know anyone outside of the medical field that just saw this because I posted this on my Instagram, I hate you. I'm just kidding. Love you guys. Thank you for supporting. But two things. One is October 18th, Saturday, UC Davis in Northern California, Davis, California. There will be a pre-health conference. A lot of medical schools will be there. And this is very important because with economic times and budget cuts going across higher education, that affects medical schools. It also affects medical schools' travel. So not a lot of medical schools have the opportunity to travel places. And this is a huge national one where a lot of students come out. So if you're in the Northern California area, UC Davis around Sacramento, Saturday, October 18th, we will be there. We will be representing our UCSD School of Medicine and our PA program as well, our physician assistance program as well. And we will be doing an in-person workshop as well with a couple of current students to kind of talk about what it's like to be a medical student here. We'll talk about the curriculum, their process and application, and everything like that. That was the first one. Second one is, if you didn't have a question answered right now, or you couldn't think of anything right now, or you still haven't finished your application, we do offer weekly office hours every Wednesday, 2 p.m. Pacific on Zoom. If you go to the UCSD admissions website, there's a link for virtual office hours. All you have to do is just register, and they're every Wednesday until I think early December. Then we take a month break for winter break, and then they resume after MLK. 1 hour, we do an introduction, and then we just answer questions. That's all it is. It's a round table. We answer questions. It's usually myself and usually my director, and we try to be as helpful as possible. We don't try to gatekeep anything. We try to be as transparent as we can and honest with our can, kind of like letting you know what you need to do in your application, being honest, being direct, being sincere on that, because you want to tell your story to get it. But that's it for me. Once again, thank you all for being here. They have my email address. If you want to email me, reach out. I will be posting. Like I said, I will be on the virtual office hours next Wednesday. So be sure to check that out, and every Wednesday. But thank you all for this opportunity. I appreciate it. And Matthew, thank you. You're a great help. And yeah, good luck everyone on the application process.
Thank you for coming.
No problem. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody.